So welcome back to the Almondvalekitchens Cookery Club. Today we're going to show you how to make a wonderful risotto, a great staple, and something you can always rustle up with store-cut ingredients as long as you've got a little risotto rice in the cupboard. So the basis of any good risotto is what the Italians call a sofrito. It's softly cooked onion, celery and garlic until it goes lovely and sweet and translucent, and then we start building the risotto from there. So we start with the onion. Make your fine vertical stripes down the onion, quite close together but not all the way to the end, and leave the root on so that it holds the onion intact. Make some horizontal stripes through it, slices through it. The trick with celery is to always peel it. We give it a quick rinse first. So using a standard vegetable peeler, just run it down the length of the celery so that you pick up all the stringy bits. So we want to cut this nice and finely, and of course the finer it is, the quicker it will cook, and the less noticeable it will be. Right, into the pan. And another tip with whenever you're sweating onions, in order to stop them burning too quickly, add a little touch of salt. That helps to draw the moisture out and stops it from catching on the edges. A little good slug of olive oil. Give it a stir. And of course, some classic garlic. Cut it nice and fine. Right. Stir that. So you want that to become nice and soft and translucent and really start to sweeten up. You get all those harsh onion flavours and smells out. So of course, key ingredients in the risotto rice, and you get three varieties. The two most commonly available are arborio, which is the slightly bigger version, to the one I like to use a lot of is carnaroli. It's a bit finer, it's a little less starchy, and it's got a much more delicate bite, I find. And it works well with things like mushroom and seafood risottos. So, our sofrito is pretty much there, nice and soft, and we want to add the rice straight into the pan. So we have enough oil in there. Make sure that your pan isn't too dry, because what you want to do is coat the rice in a little bit of olive oil. So, general rule of thumb is about a handful per person per serving. So that's one person, two person, and then I like to add a little bit extra for luck, because it always goes a long way and people always come back for some seconds. So always add in one more, and then the next step is you really have to stir this through very well and actually toast the rice in the oil. But you also want to ensure that you pick up all the excess oil. So you don't want a claggy oil base at the bottom, because what will happen is your finished risotto will have an oil ring around it. Once you dish it up, you'll see the oil split out a bit. So, toast it on a medium to high heat. Covered in oil, you can see that the rice has picked up all the excess oil, and that's an important indicator to show that you have enough rice and you have enough oil in your pan. So already the basis of the risotto is working. So, continue toasting for a minute or two on a high heat. And then you need a good splash of bit of white wine. You can use red wine depending on what sort of risotto. In the winter it's really nice to have a red wine risotto, maybe some mushrooms or some oxtail or something like that. So a little splash of white wine in here, and what we want to do is actually bubble that off and burn that off. So we'll increase the heat a little bit and boil that quite rapidly so that we drive off that alcohol. We start driving off that excess fluid, and you can see as I draw the spatula through the pan, it comes away quite cleanly. We don't have all that excess fluid at the bottom, and we want that clean stir, as you can see, each time I draw through. And you can already see that it's starting to get quite starchy and quite thick around the edges, and that's what forms the creaminess of a risotto. That's the real beauty of a risotto. So it's all these little tips that help and ensure that your risotto is beautifully creamy and properly cooked. We don't need to add creams and mascarpone and anything like that at the end. Okay, so that's all been driven off. You can smell that there isn't any more alcohol coming off of that. The pan is nice and dry. The starch is starting to come out of the rice. So you want that to become nice and soft and translucent and really start to sweeten up. You get all those harsh onion flavours and smells out. Okay, in the meantime, we can prepare our stock. So any sort of stock cube would work. You can make up your own chicken stock. You know, we're basing it on having a little bit of a store-cupboard risotto here, so it's more likely you'll have a stock cube rather than fresh stock. But what to do is, after you've had your roast chicken, make up some chicken stock using the carcass, put it in the freezer. If you put it in ice cube trays, then you can take a cube of stock out when you need it, and you can use it straight like that. Dissolve it straight into the dish that you're using. Otherwise, these commercial varieties are actually really rather good. Now, once you get about halfway with your risotto, you can start thinking about what else you'd like to put in it. Frozen peas go in at the end. You can cook your mushrooms beforehand, or if you like them a little bit more sort of mushroomy, you can add them in raw and let the liquid cook it. Leftover roast chicken goes at the end, or you can put raw chicken in earlier on and let the liquid cook it through. So risotto, tremendously versatile, but just think about what sort of ingredients you're putting in and at what stage you need them to finish off cooking. So today we're going to use some lovely chestnut mushrooms, and we're just going to slice these. You could also use packet dried mushrooms, or the wild mushrooms that you get. Lovely in the autumn when it starts to get cooler. Great mushroom risotto in the evening, perfect supper. So, or if you go foraging and you get lovely, we're coming into chanterelle season now, all the wild mushrooms coming to the fore. Go and have a look and see if you can find them. Those are perfect in a risotto. Okay, so we keep adding a ladle full of stock at a time. You can use vegetable stock, you can use chicken stock. If you're making a fish risotto, of course, you can use fish stock. So we just test to see how the rice is doing. Coming on, nice and creamy. Still a little bit raw, so we'll need another probably 7 or 8 minutes on that. I just want to gently be encouraging that stock into the rice. Keep stirring. And as the stock all becomes incorporated into the rice, you add another, probably about a ladleful each time. Just about there. Still a little bite in the rice, which is perfect. So we'll take the rice off the direct heat just to slow it down from cooking too quickly and overcooking while we go and get the other bits. So we need to finish off with some butter. And what's always nice is a little just a little flat leaf parsley or some sort of herb in there, a bit of green. Okay, so chop up some parsley. And now you can already see how creamy it is. We're going to make that extra creamy. So, you need a good knob of butter, but this time you wanted to cube it. And the real trick here is, what you need to do is amalgamate and create an emulsion between the butter and the liquid in the pan. So you need to sort of beat it almost till you hear a sort of thwack thwack sound. If you can hear that. And that starts to emulsify between the stock and the butter. So that's what makes it really nice and creamy. No tricks. No mascarpone, no cream, no creme fraiche, just the action between the butter and the stock. There's a sort of softness about the rice. It just sort of flops. It isn't too tight, it isn't too sticky, and it isn't too wet either. You want to get that balance right. And so the final thing is, in terms of finishing, grate in some fresh parmesan. As you can see, we buy our parmesan nice and whole, just like that. Good Parmesan Reggiano. Delicious and fresh and ready to serve. You can see how it just folds onto the plate. It's not too tight and it's not too wet. Always just clean the rim of the plate because the presentation is key. So join me again, Craig and McAlpine at the Almondvale Cookery Club for more great food and top tips, and we hope you will join us and send us your tips at www.almondvalekitchens.com.